Welcome to Let's Talk About Sex. And this month's topic is Tantra. I am Joanna Kennedy, and I am incredibly excited to be here with you tonight and to have the chance to talk about this topic in sexuality that is so profound and so powerful. What's interesting for me is I get the privilege of talking about romance, and I get to talk about relationship, and I get to help women be the best women that they are, and men show up powerfully and masterfully as the men that they are. And what's so curious about that to me is that there's so many different dimensions, and Tantra is just one of them. And yet it's also been an incredibly powerful, intense, healing, awakening experience in me and in my life. And so tonight I'm here to share with you about this powerful practice. And before I dive into Tantra itself, I want to tell you a little bit more about me. And again, I am Joanna Kennedy, and there's lots of different ways that I refer to myself, but I'm so committed to awakening the genuine, authentic men and women, the authentic masculine and feminine that lives within us, and the dynamic that happens between us when those energies come together in a really healthy, powerful way. And the truth is, I've learned, and I know deep in my soul, that we're different. And that the masculine gifts the feminine gifts the masculine, and that neither one of us gets to be our most phenomenal selves without relating to the other. And so that's what's exciting about this, is that we get to relate to one another in an intensely powerful way. And so that's my mission in the world, is to bring us together. And the truth is, it's bringing us together in relationship, it's bringing us together in family, it's bringing us together in the business world, it's bringing us together in the bedroom. And every place that we look, there's a way in which when masculine and feminine, male and female come together, we co-create in an incredible way when we let each other be who we are. And we stop trying to make each other be like the opposite sex. Now, please, as I speak to this, for those of you that might be same-sex couples that are listening, or who don't relate specifically to the masculine and feminine, the essence of what I'm speaking about is there's a distinction between male and female bodies. There's a distinction between masculine and feminine energy. And the truth is, it doesn't matter whether we love an opposite sex person or we love a same-sex person. It doesn't matter what our attraction is, it's what creates the chemistry and what creates the elevating dynamic. And so in a same-sex couple, where I might say masculine and feminine, what you're going to want to look for is which one of you carries those energies. And as we get into Tantra, a big part of that will be there's a huge piece of Tantra that separates giving from receiving. And so you'll decide who's giving, who's receiving in any particular moment. And sometimes that's a moment that lasts 30 seconds or a minute, maybe less if you're in a kiss. And maybe that's a moment, if you will, that lasts for 3 hours because it's a tantric healing session where one person gets to simply receive for a long period of time. And how long that is, we'll talk about at some point, maybe not tonight, but it's an experience where you get to be the receiver. And so again, that can happen with our male-female couples, it can happen with same-sex couples. So I speak primarily to same-sex because that's my journey. And it's the one that I know the most, and it's one that I've experienced the most, and I can share my wisdom from. And completely honor and want to invite into the practice those who might be in same-sex relationships. So with that, how the heck did I get here doing a video on what is Tantra and having a monthly series called Let's Talk About Sex? How in the world did I get here? Because what you don't know about me, or may not know about me if you haven't watched before, is that I'm an electrical engineer that spent 13 years in the oil and gas and high-tech industries. And I was climbing that corporate ladder, and I was proving that I was a woman that could do anything. And the truth is, I'm still that woman. But rather than doing what I thought I should do or what I felt like would make me safe, now I get to spend so much of my time doing what I love and being who I am as a woman. And so this woman's body that sits here 10 years ago when I left the corporate world didn't look anything like this. Just a year, it started to transition in the year before I left, but the year before that, it was really common to see me in button-down khaki, what am I trying to say? Button-down shirts and khaki pants. And the formal business suits. And, I had no idea there was a woman inside this body back then. And, I love being a woman now. And the men in my life, I keep learning all these ways that I think, oh yeah, you don't like that. And they're like, please bring that part of you. I love it. It turns me on. It shocks me at times to hear those comments from the amazing men that show up in my life. And they keep inviting me to bring more and more of what for years I thought wasn't welcome. And so it is that journey of awakening in the corporate world and seeing that this woman wasn't here and that had made me incredibly sad. Let alone led me to a lot of relationships that didn't work, a lot of heartbreak. And so it was that drove me, that inspired me. You name it, I was pulled, I was, nudged from behind, I was drawn from within to step out and start supporting women to find who they are, to support men, because in a lot of ways it's been just as confusing for men to figure out what it is they want and who they are. And so now coming together, working with singles and couples to stand powerfully on our own. And as we dive into Tantra tonight, we're going to talk about how we have to be in our own body and experiencing and aware of what's happening here before we share that, and as we share that with a partner. So the self-awareness that must come is enormous. And the more I bring me, the more my partner gets to experience. The more I'm willing to open, the more pleasure I get to have course through my body. And then there's the times where I'll choose to close. And I get to influence that too. And so that's part of what brought me here. And the rest of it, not necessary for tonight, but leave it to say that every piece that led me here was about living an authentic, fulfilled, love-filled, ecstasy-filled, passionate, turned-on, alive life. And that's why I sit here today. That's why I do what I do in the world. I'm committed to having us all get to experience this juiciness, get to experience our turn-on anywhere and everywhere we want to in life. And so this talk tonight is for both singles and couples. When I decided that I wanted to explore Tantra, I was a single. I did a lot of my studying as a couple. And this that we talk about tonight will be for both singles and couples. And I'll make some distinctions, and then as we continue, and I'll do some more talks about deeper and deeper aspects of Tantra in the future, we'll talk about more and more practices. But almost everything that I teach you, if you're single tonight, do it within your own body. And then you can invite a new partner into sharing it with you. And your partner doesn't have to know everything about Tantra. They don't have to know even a lot about Tantra. There's certain things that you might want to share with your partner, and there's many things that you can bring as a tantric lover, like the way that you move your muscles. For example, women, how you learn to contract the muscles within your yoni. And so yoni is the first word that I'll share tonight. If you haven't heard that word, it means sacred space. And it's a Sanskrit word that is used for the vagina. And so changing, as we get into Tantra, and we're going to talk about that it's sacred sexuality. And so changing that language to no longer having some of the terms that we've heard a woman's genitalia called, and transforming that immediately into a sacred space. And so in the yoni, we have different sets of muscles that, one, when we're squeezing them in a man's fingers, or someone's fingers may be inside of us, we can learn to intensify our orgasm by learning how to squeeze our muscles. So the very first one, we hear about Kegel exercising, and, we talk about it in areas when women have challenges with urination, or after having a baby, those muscles aren't as strong. So the very first one, if you want one to practice, is those same muscles that stop you from urinating. Those are the ones you want to squeeze. Now there's other ones besides that, but that's the first one. Start practicing that one. And as my teacher said to me, you can practice them at the stoplights. You can be sitting at the stoplight and nobody knows that you're squeezing those muscles down there, and maybe even turning yourself on while you're sitting at that stoplight. And now I've been speaking to women, but men, this goes for you too. Because what your muscles will invite you to do is to be able to move your penis, or in Sanskrit, in sacred sexuality, your lingam, which in Sanskrit means wand of light. And so what would it be like, men, for you to bring that wand of light to your woman? What could you do with a wand of light as you insert your lingam into her yoni? Women, what would it be like to have that wand of light not just penetrate the physical part of your body, but what if that light extended up beyond your yoni, all the way up, and that light could touch your heart? What if that was possible? What if that light went up beyond your heart, all the way up, and could connect? Because what we're going to talk about tonight is also that Tantra is sacred sexuality. And so there's going to be an aspect of the divine that's brought into this. And you'll hear me say more than once that that doesn't mean you have to believe in God. It doesn't mean that you have to be religious. And the practice is founded in spiritual practice. And yet, my experience is, both for myself and for others, is that there's no set of required beliefs. There's no set of required traditions that you must follow. It's simply to allow yourself to discover what you discover, to feel what you feel, to connect in the ways that you connect. Maybe just to your partner, maybe with yourself, and maybe with something you've never connected with. And all of a sudden you have an experience that you can't explain. What was that? And so this is the invitation and the possibility. And there's nothing that's required. So I'm going to pause for just one moment and check this text just to make sure, because I've got somebody watching for any technical issues, so I want to be sure that everything's coming across just the way that we want it to. So let me grab this text quickly. And good, we're all set. And I'm going to turn this off so it doesn't go off anymore during our conversation here tonight. So with that, knowing that it's a spiritual practice, knowing that we have a yoni in a sacred space, men, you have a wand of light, that it doesn't require any tradition. What the heck is this practice called Tantra? And for those of you that follow me closely, you may have seen the article that I wrote last week called What is Tantra? And if you haven't, you could find that on my website on the blog at happinessloveandpleasure.com. And in that article, I paused and I said, what's Tantra? What's the experience of Tantra really brought to me? What have I witnessed it bring in others? And we'll talk about, there's actually 6 things that I think are the core components that I've experienced as the core components of Tantra. And yet, let's talk about what is it. And the first thing that might shock you, because we're sitting here on a conversation talking about sex, is that traditionally, when it started, and actually as it still exists in its origin traditions, it's not about sex. Tantra was actually a series of spiritual practices. And those spiritual practices were all about bringing what you might call the practicer or the practitioner of that practice closer to spirit, closer to the divine. And so in its origin, there were actually 108 different tantras. And what's curious is that of those 108, less than 10 were related to sex. And yet those 10 practices, or I actually think it was 6 or 7 practices, were actually, yes, grounded in sexual practice, grounded in movement of sexual energy. And so this is the origin. What's interesting is that when these traditions were brought from the Eastern religions, and Tantra itself comes out of the Hindu tradition, when they were brought into the East, it was basically made synonymous with sex. And I have a belief, I don't know this to be true, but I have a belief that we landed on the sexual pieces of Tantra because our society was craving something deeper in our relationship to sexuality. And that's really what led me here, was the deep knowing inside myself. And I don't even know at the time that I could have called it a knowing. There was a sense that there was something I was missing. There was more. There was a deeper possibility in this powerful physical connection that I was having with another human being, with the powerful energy that would move through me in self-pleasuring, that there was more to it. And at those times, there were my incredible frustrations. Like, why doesn't this work? Why it should be more intimate. I know it can be more intimate. Why isn't he meeting me there? Why am I not having an orgasm? All the questions that also came up. And those varied over time, but lots of those questions were here. So coming to Tantra to find more, to experience what was truly possible in our relationships. And so as I talk about our society and when it came westward and Tantra became synonymous with sex, it's really my belief that we were longing for more. We wanted to understand this powerful experience in our lives, and that we came from the puritanical beginnings of our culture in America. And so many of us have been in this battle of, God, it feels good, God, I want it, I feel it, I know it's important, to an underlying conditioning that there's a way in which it's not okay. And so this is my belief about why Tantra has evolved in America and in the Western cultures the way that it has. Now, spiritual practice. Those 108 Tantras and now tantric sexuality or sacred sexuality, as I often refer to it, brings in aspects of meditation. It brings in aspects of stillness. Yes, stillness and sexuality. I can tell you that I've actually had some of my most powerful orgasms in stillness. He wasn't moving. At least he didn't physically appear to be moving. But the deeper energy that we get to connect to in Tantra, and let me tell you, it's not the physical movement, guys, that is so penetrating. It is your wand of light. It is the energy with which you penetrate us. And so it may feel as if you're still inside my yoni, and yet your presence, when you know how to focus it on my sacred spot, or also referred to in more common culture as the G-spot, is that energy that you can penetrate through the ends of your fingers into me is what awakens the most powerful experiences in me. The waves of orgasm that can come for minutes after the movement has stopped, is because of the energy that's coursing through our body. So part of this practice will be to cultivate your relationship with your energy and how it moves in your body, and how you can move it through your partner's body, how you can receive it from your partner's body. And we're going to receive that energy in multiple places, but primarily where we're going to experience it in Tantra is in our heart and in our sexual center. And so these will be the core energy centers where we move that energy. And so there's also yoga and postures. So we'll call them positions. But if we go all the way back to the Kama Sutra, that many of us have probably, if we have any sexual curiosity, at least picked up that book at some point. And all of the positions that are there. Now, there are yoga positions that have nothing to do with how we meet another partner, but how we move our own body, again, to connect us with our power, to connect us with our energy. But there's yogic positions that connect in with Tantra. So one of the other things, besides getting my Advanced Certified Tantric Educators certification, I also have a partner yoga certification. So there is the yoga of our individual, there's the yoga of partnership, and there's the yoga of lovemaking. It's how we bring our bodies together, how we can open. What movements do we do that heart open and allow us to drop in and feel a level of love, experience a level of love that maybe we've never allowed ourselves to experience before. Maybe we didn't even know was possible. There'll be exercises to open the hips so that we can really allow that energy to flow. Things that open up the back and allow. So those, you may have heard the term Kundalini. And our Kundalini energy will move up through the spine when there's no blocks. And yet, if you're like me and like most of us out there, we have blocks in those energy channels that move up through the body. And so part of Tantra is to open up those energy channels. And so you may have heard that a Kundalini experience will be like energy shooting up the spine and out through the top of the head. This is one of the energetic experiences that you can share with a partner, but in this case I'm speaking very specifically about that energy moving in your own body. And so again, for a single, you can be pleasuring, you can be learning how to breathe, which we'll talk about. You can be learning how to set your intention and move your energy and have an incredibly powerful experience. So what would it be like, men, if you became on your own incredibly conscious about how to move the muscles of your lingam? You became conscious of how to control the energy. You became conscious of how to direct that energy. You became conscious of how to choose your orgasm, your multiple orgasms. Because actually one of these practices, many of these practices, will allow you to expand that orgasm from the average of a couple of seconds to when long-term practices, that orgasm can last minutes. Now, yes, that's an advanced practice, but here's what's possible. If we go from a few seconds to even 30 seconds, hugely powerful difference in the experience that you're having, in the level of orgasm. And so these are some of the elements that are part of this spiritual practice. There's ritual. There's setting of a space. And so if you watched last month's Let's Talk About Sex, I had this set up in a space where we saw the elements that have been brought into a bedroom, the colors that might have been brought in, the figures, the candles, the elements that bring into our environment to create and set a sacred space for us to have this opening. And in one of the Tantra programs that I'm about to be releasing, we'll speak about not just the sacred space that we create in our bedroom or the sacred space that we create in our home, the sacred space we create within our body, the sacred space we create in each of our love-making moments. And when I say love-making in this case, I don't necessarily mean intercourse. We can practice Tantra without ever taking off our clothes. Again, it's an energetic practice. And so, on a simple level, Tantra might start with, how am I meeting your eyes? And what's the energy that's communicated through our eyes. And that our right eye, I talked about giving and receiving, our right eye is actually our sending eye. Our left eye is actually our receiving eye. And so as you might be eye gazing with someone, gaze into their left eye. As someone's gazing at you and with you, can you receive the gaze? And as you receive the gaze, can you allow them to see into your soul? And so this might be one practice. Another practice could be simply learning, now hold my hands this way, learning how to hold our partner. And that when we put our hands on different spots on our partner's body, whether it's the front side or it's on the back, we have a different energetic impact. And we can invite a different energetic experience. So if I'm with my partner, or my partner is with me and wants to move energy through my body, he might choose to put one hand over my second chakra, which would be above the sacrum in the back, and put another hand behind my heart, which is going to invite energy to move up my spine. So we can put our hands wherever we want to when we're making love and we're touching. But one of the practices that you'll very first learn as you step into Tantra is conscious touch. Because our hands are an amazing expression of energy. And so how do you touch your partner? What's the consciousness that you bring in your hands? And then where do you choose? Because you're wise and you know that different holds in different parts of the body will invite different energetic experiences. When we get into allowing a man to do sacred spot massage, which can be healing, which can be awakening, there's different holds that are actually called mudras in Sanskrit. They're different sacred positions that invite energy to move in different ways. So where do I place my fingers? Where, or I should say, where in this case would a man place his fingers on me to invite different movement? What's the different? We have different energies in the different fingers. Some are more penetrating than others. And so this is, again, how do I touch my partner? For a woman, what are the different ways that I can hold his wand? And we spoke of earlier about how I can move my muscles inside him, or with him inside me, and give him a very, very powerful experience. And man, let me tell you, women, you've got this amazing gift inside your body, this yoni, that can pleasure a man, and he doesn't even have to know until he's experiencing that you're going to do anything. So what a joy it is sometimes to not say anything, but then squeeze my muscles in a way that I know is going to drive him crazy, and then watch it happen. Oh, yeah, that turns me on. And so these gifts that when we get to learn about our own internal muscles, that we get to experience more pleasure. So let me pause here and take a few questions, because there were lots of questions that came in about this topic. And I just love that you guys submit your questions. So please continue. If there's more questions that come up after this, you can submit them on the website, and I will I will answer many of them. I look back over the previous months, and are there any questions that apply to our topic? So I'm going to take a couple minutes and answer a few questions, then I'll come back and tell you a little bit more about some of my tantric experiences. So let's see. What do we have here? Well, actually, let's start with this one. I've been talking a little bit about partners, or being a single, I should say. And so one of the questions is, how do you practice Tantra without a partner? And so as we've been speaking here, the practice is the breath. So choosing how to control your breath, how to move your breath, because there's going to be two ways. I talked about energy. And so energy is what's going to elevate your orgasm. It's what's going to expand your orgasm beyond your genitals, because that's where most of our orgasms are centered. But whole body orgasms, orgasms that race up through the body, incredibly pleasurable, incredibly powerful. And so the two vehicles that are going to move that energy, and actually I'll say three. One is intention. It's your desire to move it. It's your intention to move it. The second one is going to be your breath. And so breathing, and many times it's going to be in breath, it's going to bring that energy up, and then out breath is going to let it drift and down and move out. And that will vary in certain breathing practices, but it's that movement of the breath. The other thing, and again, if you're at all like me, this was the toughest one, but sound. Making sounds moves your energy. Making sounds, there's a vibration that happens in your body, and it's that vibration that so often can open you up beyond a block, that can open you up, where I talk about expanding our pleasure boundaries, or I like actually even better saying it, expanding our pleasure potential. But our potential, let's say that it's this big right now. And to open that potential up bigger, there's something that's kept our potential at this level. And so we might even call it a comfort zone, or it's a place that this is where we've been before. And what's beyond here, it's unknown. But what we do is allow the breath or the sound to help us expand beyond where we were before. To have that orgasm be longer. To have the contractions and the expansion that happen with that orgasm be even more intense. And so it is through the breath, or in this case, as I was speaking about, through the sound that allows the whatever's holding this old boundary in place, or this level of potential, and it expands it. It penetrates through it. And so sounding is an incredible part. As you're coming close to that peak, ladies and gentlemen, give it a sound. Give it a sound. Give it a sound. If you get into an event with me, you will discover that I'm constantly inviting you to give your sexuality a sound. And so it's so important to connect in with that part of you. So that's one of the ways for practicing without a partner. And then how do you talk to a new partner, or even your current partner? Maybe you've been in a relationship for 40 years. And you've discovered Tantra and you want to practice it with your partner. How the heck do I start this conversation? Boy, number one thing, honesty. And personal. Be personal about it. So often we'll get all excited and we go, I want you to do Tantra with me. And they're like, what are you talking about? We've got a good sex life. Everything's cool. I don't need any of this new stuff. This is, airy-fairy. That's weird. Only the strange people do that. I'm good. I'm a great lover. I don't need anything else. We got all kinds of reasons. Besides the ones where we're simply afraid. And let me tell you that, particularly I'll speak to women, there are many of us that have been so conditioned that our sexuality, and it just shows up differently in men and women, because what I'm about to say is totally as true for men as it is for women. And there's a way in which I will say, and I could talk about this in a lot of detail, and I'm not right now, but that we as women can disconnect from our sexuality in a greater way. And my guess is that men, you've experienced that and seen that in some form, whether it's, for a period of time where a woman in your life has disconnected, or a woman who's just never fully connected in her adulthood with her sexuality. And so that aspect of our fear, that can be a big part of this when we bring it to a new partner. And so it's sharing your joy. And this is going to be a practice that when I speak about masculine and feminine power in business, or I speak about it in anyone that we relate with, when we bring our juice, when we bring our turn on, when we bring our authentic self, without a demand for reciprocation here. What we get is the possibility of our partner listening. And most often in this case, what we want to be is heard. And so the first thing is to bring it with your joy. Keep the sharing focused on you. And then that invites them to be curious without pushing them, without demanding, without expecting. Because let me tell you, demand, expectation, in relationship, I don't care where or what part of relationship, those two things are going to push away so far what it is you're actually trying to bring in. And I don't care if it's taking out the trash or getting laid. Either one, you pushing is going to send it further away. So, with that being said, that's the first part, is just bring it personally. Bring your joy, bring your curiosity. Bring your questions. Then ask, if there's some resistance that shows up, would there be something that you'd be willing to do with me? Here's one of the simple things, like a breathing technique, like looking into each other's eyes, like learning touch. Some of the very beginning basic things. Would you be willing to share this with me? And let them choose, or give them a couple of options. Here's a couple of things I've learned. Would you be willing to do one or two of these with me? And this gives them choice to step in slowly. So, and then there might be to take a class, to read a book, where you can start to learn, again, to move your own energy. And there's nothing that says in your body you can't be having a sexual experience with your partner and be choosing to start moving your own energy and discovering how it expands in your own body, whether your partner is consciously or actively participating or not. And this is the gift, again, singles, when you come into a new relationship, men, you can have her going, what was that? What did you just do? Oh my God. Because you've got the wisdom to touch her heart with your wand of light. And let's just give you a tip that one of the ways that you can do that with a new partner is 2 ways of breathing. So one of the ways that you're going to breathe with a partner is that you're going to match their breath. And so most often I'll suggest for the man to allow the woman to just breathe as she normally breathes. And she doesn't, again, need to even know you're doing this. You just match her breath. So when she inhales, you inhale. You're inhaling together. When she exhales, you exhale. You're exhaling together. Next inhale, and you're mirroring each other's breath. And what this is going to do is start to align your energies. And start, as they align, it's going to open things up more so that the energy can circulate through your body. So one of the energetic things, and I'll give you this without all the background, is that men, one of the energetic movements is that you send through the wand of light, as you penetrate her, you send that energy up to her heart. Her heart penetrates out. Women actually give. Our breasts penetrate out of our body. We send from our heart center. Men, you actually receive from your heart center. And it's one of the reasons that your heart is so vulnerable in a way that our sexual center is so vulnerable. We're penetrated through our sexual center. You're penetrated through your heart. And we need to treat each other kindly. And I'll go into that in much more detail in later sessions. But the experience here, the invitation, the first bit of tantric practice that I want to give you, or another bit of tantric practice that you can get started with, is how to move that energy up into her body, sensing it, even if she's not aware. Excuse me, sneeze. If she's not aware, you can still imagine that energy circulating. Your intention will carry that energy back into your body and then circulate it back through your lingam and through her body again. So you've created a circuit of energy. Now, if the two of you bring this together, it's even more powerful, or can be even more powerful. I'll say that you can have a powerful experience with just one of you doing it. And when both of you move it, you can circulate that same energy up through your third eye. You can move it through your whole body. And so these are some of the practices that you'll bring in. Before I answer the next question, I wanted to talk about, I mentioned earlier that there are 6 things, 6 ways that I feel like Tantra impacts our lives. And one of them is a deep awakening. It's awakening of our sensation. It's awakening, yes, all of us can have sex. How much are we actually feeling? How much are we feeling in our genitals? How much are we feeling in our bodies? And I can imagine out there that there's a lot of men saying, I feel it. Oh my God, I feel it. I have these amazing orgasms. I'll invite you to the possibility that there's so much more, that there's an entire field, if you will, of sexual energy that you've yet to touch. It's almost as if your mind couldn't imagine that existed. And so it will be awakening energy throughout other parts of your body. It will be having sexual experiences in places that you didn't know were sexual. And so it's very awakening. For many of us, we can be numbed out. It can be our nipples that are numbed out. It can be our yonis that are numbed out for women. We can have certain spots inside of our yoni that feel very alive. And truth be told, when we get into some of the healing work around Tantra, which is the second of the 6 ways in which Tantra impacts us, is that we can discover that there's healing, there's places within our body that are holding old hurts, or holding our shame, or holding our judgments, or what somebody said about us when they thought we were doing something we shouldn't have been sexually when we were young. Whatever it is. And so it's that awakening that can come, that healing that can come, that awakens the numbness, the spots that are numb. And what if there wasn't a numb spot anywhere left in your yoni, women? What if the whole thing was alive with pleasure? What if the whole area were to expand? And this is what's interesting, is I can speak about from my own experience. I was highly contracted sexually, and I was highly numb. And I had an occasional orgasm, and occasionally it even came with screaming orgasm, but it was very occasional. And what's happened is that it's as if the whole tissue inside my yoni, inside my vagina, has completely opened up, where it's spacious and more expansive than was ever there 8 years ago before I started Tantra. And so this is another aspect, is that it's as if it fills up. And while we're there, this pops into my head, is that the G-spot, or the sacred spot. This is the source for many women of ejaculation. And yes, women, you too can ejaculate. It's very different than a male ejaculation. It's much more fluid. And I wrote in the article last weekend, there's phenomenal experiences that can happen in our sexuality when we're not aware. And when I say phenomenal, they're as if we felt like we connected to something that didn't exist. Or for many women, we have an ejaculation and this fluid comes squirting out of our body. What is this? And many of us get confused. And I've heard stories from women that they were so ashamed they thought they peed. It's not pee. The qualities, the essence of that is very distinct. And there's a sweetness, actually, that can come to Amrita, which another Sanskrit word is divine nectar. So again, as this woman's yoni opens up to more pleasure, the numbness goes away, the aliveness unfolds, the G-spot wakes up, and this can invite ejaculation. And as speaking of earlier, there's 7 different types of touch that you'll learn in the basic Tantra. One of those touches is a static touch, a still touch. And it is that, for me, that I've discovered can be the most potent invitation for me to have an incredible orgasm and ejaculation. So these are some of the things that are possible when we bring healing into our tantric practices. A couple of the other things that are key parts is the connection. And so Tantra, very much, this sacred practice is about deepening the connection. And so how am I opening my heart? And so one of the things besides meditation, besides yogic practices, besides ritual, there is the intimate dynamic. And so there's practices that invite us to bring our hearts more into our sexuality. And so we might share with a partner in a genuinely authentic way. This is one of the practices that we might do in a puja, which is a devotional exercise between either two people, or might practice it in a circle where we get to experience this on a deeper level, still honoring our personal relationships, but where we get to help each other expand. And so we might share what we're afraid our partner would see in us. Or we might share something that we're afraid to share about our sexuality. We might share a desire that some part of us has never allowed us to share before. We might take a risk, and one of the practices that we might do is, when I look at you, I see. And it's very different than the conversation we might have with our lover across the dinner table. To sit and create a sacred space and then offer, when I look at you, I see. And let the words come. Let them be spoken from that deeper place within. Because this is a verbal way, it's an energetic way to create intimacy. And then as you're meeting physically, you'll see and you'll feel on a deeper level. So there's connection. There's connection with our partner in our singles practice. And before we really are powerful as a partner, in a partner practice, is that we're connected in with ourselves. And so I'm connecting in to feel, what's the vibration of energy feel like in my yoni? Can I notice it moving up into my body? What's the energy in my heart? Is there a contraction that's happening there? Is it willing to open? Is it willing to be penetrated with love? And so building the connection here. And then there's the connection with the divine. So all of these. So third aspect is connection. Fourth aspect is expansion. We've been talking about ways to expand our pleasure boundaries, to expand the level of energy that moves through our bodies, to expand our capacity for love, to expand our capacity for pleasure. And so all of this expansion happens. And I was checking the time. I wanted to make sure that I was honoring the time. And then there is a way in which this tantric practice has to, I talked about the energy moving up and down our spine, the energy moving between us. Where that's most potent and powerful is when our heart is aligned with our sexuality, is aligned with our spirit. And so there's an alignment that is invited into this. And in my breath, in my presence, as I sit with you, what is and am I aligned? And the deeper that I align, the deeper that you are aligned if we're practicing together, the more we can open together. So again, for singles, feeling the alignment of your heart. Are you telling the truth about your heart? Are you telling the truth about your sexuality? And it may not be a spoken truth, but honoring the desire that's there, honoring a block that's there. Because as much as our blocks and our fears shut us down of shame and what's not good about this, we can have our fears of the intensity of this power in a way that we close off because it might be too big. It might overwhelm somebody. It might overwhelm me. And so it's that again, we want to get in line. Am I fully open to experiencing the power of this love? So inner alignment is a piece that comes from this. And then the last piece is what I might call sex magic or manifesting. And so there's a way in which this sexual energy, this sacred sexual energy, is an incredible, incredible manifesting energy. It is the most creative, powerful energy that exists on the planet. And so we can take this, and there's practices, and you can, again, without knowing all the teaching. But you can simply, if you've got an intention or a desire in your life, set that intention before your lovemaking session. And in the moment of orgasm, if you can draw that vision of what you're wanting to manifest in that moment of orgasm, it's the most potent time. You can impact. We are most open, we are most alive in those moments of orgasm. So bringing your intention to those moments. And there's ways that you can integrate that through your whole lovemaking, but if you were to just start with 2, it would be to set an intention before your lovemaking for what you'd like to manifest, what you'd like to release, bring into your world. And then, if you remember it in that moment of orgasm, to see the vision of it. And this will invite the energy of your potent sexuality to align with your desire and bring it manifest in the world. And there's lots of more study on that. That's another aspect. It's also, and I've absolutely experienced this piece myself, is to set the intention for our sexual connection to heal a physical condition. I've had migraines shift through sexual practice. And I won't tell you that it completely went away, but the level at which I felt it absolutely decreased. And I just read a recent study that there's been some more research done on sexuality around migraines. And it really resonated because I was like, oh yeah, I know that time when that migraine, I tried it. And sure enough, I got improvement, I got relief. And ways that you can, there's a way in which it can be a form of prayer. And so this is the manifesting aspect of Tantra. So let's go back to a couple more questions. And I love this one. Ideas for older couples. Oh my God, this is so amazing. As we move through our different hormonal cycles in life, actually, my experience is I got to study Tantra with many of the people that I was going through my teacher training were significantly older than me. And I'm in my mid-40s, so I can't tell you as an older person in the 60s, which is what this particular question was about, what that feels like, but I can tell you what I've witnessed. And what I've been able to really observe is that there's this idea that our sexuality goes away as we get older. No. It is still very alive. It may be differently experienced, but very alive. The truth is, my belief is, I think there's actually more opportunity when we get beyond those childbearing years, when we get beyond the intense hormonal drive of the masculine in the 20s. And not to say that you can't practice Tantra. I've taught this and had great questions and interactions with very young people who want to bring this sacredness into their sexuality early on. Yes, totally possible in your 20s and even your teens. Oh my God, that would be amazing to make sexuality a sacred experience in your teens. But for those of you in your 60s, this energy will invite you to have a sexual connection that may look different than it has in the past, but feel more powerful. I've heard this said by men and women in their 60s that they're having more powerful experiences sexually than they've ever had at any moment in their life before this. And so we might look at what Charles Muir, my Tantra teacher, my certifying teacher, was a soft on. And so what do you do with a soft on? And that's not always men in their 60s. That can happen earlier. And a soft on is just as attractive and just as useful. It's got the same energy. And so we can play with it and we can paint with it. And so you might be touching a woman's outside of her yoni. And as you paint with your wand, it may inspire energy to move through, and that erection may come more slowly than it had before. You can actually, in some of the practices, enter soft. Now, we'll talk more about that at another time, about how do you actually do that. There's a Taoist practice that, and actually from the Taoist tradition, they'll often speak, it's another form of sacred sexuality that comes also out of Asia and the Eastern traditions, that you actually enter you enter soft and exit hard. That's completely opposite to what our American way we practice sexuality. We go in hard and we come out soft when we're done. It's exactly the opposite. And there's a way that that energetic experience is incredibly transformational and powerful on an entirely new level. So there's deep, deep ways for you that are in your 60s. Yes, your sexuality is incredibly alive, and there's much, much potential here. And that made me think of something that I wanted to tell you, and 60s, it'll come back to me. Oh, I know what it was. It was talking about the Taoist tradition. This was another question that was here. I shared in a recent Liberating Your Sexual Self workshop that there's a way in which a man's energy to start out with is more potent in the core of his body. And a woman's energy is kind of resting out here in her extremities. And so from the Taoist tradition, there's a teaching that says for men, you want to invite, because women are so externally focused, we're in service, we're nurturing, that men, you want to start, and most of you have heard, don't start with the goods for a woman. We don't want you to come in and immediately go to our breasts. We don't want you to immediately go to our yoni. And a big part of it is explained by this Taoist teaching is that we can't feel there immediately. We're not alive. All of our energy is out here. So help us. Start with our hands. Start with our feet. Bring the energy in. Invite the energy to come in to our body. And this is an aspect of foreplay that can start before you get into the bedroom. But you're inviting a woman into her body so that she can feel rather than being frustrated. And saying, not there and pushing your hands away. It's invite her in and she will feel on a much deeper level. The opposite is true because I said for men, you'll get, the energy is really rooted in the core of your body and very often in your genitals. And so in that case, for a fuller sexual experience, you're wanting to move that energy up from the sexual center out to the extremities. So for women, you can start with the goods. As a matter of fact, most men want you to. Yes, I want my lingam touched. Yes, please. And so coming in and you might massage their wand, and then you might take a hand, and this is a tantric practice, and as you're holding their wand and now bring up and you're touching their heart at the same time. And so you keep stroking their wand, but then there's a heart touch. And you're inviting them to connect their sexuality with their heart. And you don't have to make it a big deal, but simply laying a hand on their heart. Or you might be touching their wand and then you bring out down their thighs and expand that energy so they start to feel beyond just their genitals, where so much of that energy is concentrated. So men get to have a fuller experience by you touching their wand, by massaging, by holding, by stroking, and then inviting that energy up into other parts of their body. So bringing it up through their chest. And very often you're going to want to keep one hand on their wand and then expand out from there with your other hand. So that's another one of the questions. And we are straight up 9 o'clock right now. And so I so love being able to share this with you. I so love the opportunity to speak about something that I believe our world needs more of. And that's for us to own ourselves, to own our sexuality, to own our desire, to look at the spark of passion and love that gets created in our relationships, to bring that out into the world and even into our businesses. And not that sex, I'm not saying sex in our businesses, but what's alive in our bodies enlivens us in every part of our lives. Our creativity, our inspiration, our ideas to manifest, the new business idea, the inspiration that comes to solve the problem is so alive in our sexuality. And so these are the things that I would invite you to continue to experience. And so I am putting together a take-home program. Like, how can I get started with this without investing in a big seminar? How can I get started with this at home where I'm safe? I don't have to be in a class. And yes, the classes that I've been to, you're practicing at home, but you're learning in class. But this gives you an opportunity. This new product that I'm going to launch at the end of April gives you a chance to practice this at home. It's called Creating Sacred Intimacy. Sorry about that. All of a sudden I had a brain fart. Creating Sacred Intimacy. And so I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but the key parts of that, it's a 4-part video program, and the key parts of it are expanding, teaching you more of these techniques that expand your pleasure boundaries, teaching you how to create that inner environment, how to set the intention with your partner as you dive into lovemaking. And that intention, let me tell you, even if you never think about it again during the session, your lovemaking time, that intention has taken hold and it's taking you to places that you might not have otherwise gone. And so we'll talk about how to set the space, whether you're offering a session to a partner, whether you're lovemaking together. And then we're also going to look at that, the healing piece of it. We'll take a section, and one of the 4 videos will be much more about the healing and the awakening. And how do we move that energy so that we get to expand those pleasure boundaries? How do we get to have more of this experience? We'll talk about the breath work. We'll talk about the touch. So these are the pieces that we'll go into. And then the very last piece that the last video will speak to you about is the different practices that you can do. And so I love when it's either you as an individual or in a relationship that you take at least 5 minutes, ideally 10, and maybe more every day to commit to your sexuality, to commit to the sacred energy that runs through your body, that brings your life force, that brings your passion to life and to your relationship. And so this is what I invite you to do, is to take this and bring it into your life. Awaken you on every level, every aspect of your body, every aspect of your life, to use this energy to awaken it. So if you'd like the pre-release price on that take-home guide, it's regularly going to be $97. If you order it before I release it at the end of April, it's $37. That's all I'm going to say about it tonight. I so am committed. I don't care how you get there. If this appeals to you, find a book, find a teacher, find a workshop. Invite sacred sexuality into your life. I don't know what it's going to mean for you, but for me, it meant, I was going to say pleasure, but yeah, it brought that. But actually what it brought first was wholeness. What it brought first was one of my first, it wasn't the first, but one of the early experiences that I had in Tantra was a healing experience where my sacred spot was touched in a way that I knew I'd never go back. My whole perspective on sexuality and who I was as a woman changed so completely in those moments. And is that to say that I never had challenges after that? Yeah, I still have challenges. There's still days that things don't work the way I want them to. There's still weeks that things don't work the way I want them to. There's more than that sometimes. But there's always a growing edge. And what I know is possible now is so far beyond. And it was that moment where everything shifted. I saw my own sexuality and honoring of myself and what was possible in a man that I didn't know was possible in a man because of the way he brought his presence, his gift to our experience. Oh my God. Inside, witnessing, honoring, knowing what's possible in my partner. All of that changed my life. So it doesn't matter to me how you get there. Just simply, if this resonates, find your path. Thank you so very much. You'll find the information about creating sacred intimacy under the product section of my website. And I love you. I love that I get to do this. And I end this with one of the practices, again, that comes from the Hindu tradition. It's namaste. And namaste means the divine in me sees and acknowledges the divine in you. And this is one of the practices that Tantra is about. And so namaste tonight.